Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Superhero Leadership Podcast, hosted by former CEO of Marvel Entertainment, Peter Cuneo. Listen as he explores outstanding leadership through the lens of successful superhero leaders. Here's your host, Peter Cuneo.
Today's guest doesn't just talk about transformation, he lives it. Joe Hart began his career in litigation after earning degrees from the University of Michigan and Wayne State Law School. But his real story began when he left law to build something of his own. Since then, he's launched and led companies that blend innovation, education, and wellness. He's been an entrepreneur and a president. Today, he's the CEO of Dale Carnegie Training, a global leader in leadership development with 200 offices in 80 countries. Joe is also the co-author of Take Command, Find Your Inner Strength, Build Enduring Relationships, and Live the Life You Want. In 2019, he received the Transformative CEO Award in Leadership. Once you hear his story, you'll understand why. Joe, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Peter. It's great to be with you.
I've been a fan of Dale Carnegie for a very long time. I got my first copy from my parents when I was a teenager, and so on. And it certainly had an influence on me at that time. But Joe, we often start this show with asking our guests to talk a little bit about how they grew up, what life was like, what experiences may have led them to a path of leadership. What we find is a lot of parallels, actually, between the early experiences of our superhero leaderships that we have on here. In particular, just having a diversity of face-to-face human experiences with a diversity of people and places and things. So I wanted to start the show with that question for you. Looking back, can you see something or a trend or maybe even a single moment when you were motivated to lead a life of leadership?
As I think back, Peter, I was very fortunate to be raised in a home that was a suburban Detroit area, but two just really remarkable parents. I think I hit the parent lottery. We can't pick our parents, but I had a father and mother who were incredibly supportive. My dad was someone who was really about personal growth and learning. I remember going with him on Saturday mornings. He would take me around. We'd go on errands together. We'd go to the cleaners. We'd go to the convenience store. We'd go to all these different things. And everywhere he went, he'd know people. He'd see it. Peter, so good to see you. And people would see him, and would really light up. And he really kind of influenced me just around the whole importance of being a friendly, authentic person. But he was also someone who taught me a lot about goals. I remember, even if I go back, Peter, to like 11 years old, he would say, you're going to be far more likely to achieve goals. First of all, you have to have goals. You have to write them down. You have to look at them and think about them. So I've got written goals that go back to like 11 years old. And that was something that was really significant. But, I'll also say that growing up was hard in some ways, in the sense that I was kind of picked on. I remember, I think, looking back, if someone made fun of you or something like that, and you let it roll over your back, they would leave you alone. But if you let them know it got to you, then and I was someone who let them know it got to me, and that was kind of hard. I wouldn't say I was bullied as much, not physically, but just kind of teased and that type of thing. Part of what that instilled in me was a desire to kind of prove myself and to really set myself apart. And my parents really supported me, quite a bit. My dad always said, I'm really proud of you. And he was the one who introduced me to Dale Carnegie. You were talking about how you got How to Win Friends when you were young as a teenager. My dad was someone who told me about Dale Carnegie. My mother took a 1965 Dorothy Carnegie course. There were Dorothy Carnegie courses at that time. And so I grew up around just two amazing people who worked to bring the best out of me and support me, even when things were kind of rough as a kid.
You learned to cope in a lot of different situations. You got rubbed elbows with a lot of different people. You learned some instincts about how to influence people. And speaking of influencing, Dale Carnegie in 1936 wrote a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that one could argue is one of the most influential nonfiction books in the 20th century. Top 10 in my book, and so on. Can you tell us more, though, about who was Dale Carnegie?
Certainly, but just to go back, even what you said about the book is true. So this has been a best-selling book for 87 consecutive years. You think, what book would be a bestseller year after year after year after year? And
Wow.
And when Dale Carnegie wrote this book, he didn't have any expectation that it would be as successful as it was. It blew everyone away. And in fact, the New York Public Library not long ago looked at the most checked out books of all time, and that was in the top 5. So when you think about not just even the 20th century, but this is a book that continues to influence people, is a bestseller right now. In fact, we just came out with a new edition, updated edition of it in 2022, first update in 40 years. But Dale Carnegie was born in central Missouri. He was born in a farm, basically, and was poor most of his life. He had very devoted parents, but they were not very successful farmers. And he was very, very self-conscious. Literally, he would wear clothes with holes and patches and things like that. And he would get teased as a kid. Ultimately, the parents moved near a university, and he went to university and was very, again, self-conscious, but he discovered that he was really a great public speaker. He was winning these debate tournaments and things like that. So he ultimately leaves college, goes into sales. His first experience wasn't the greatest, but his second one, he took a territory that was the lowest in the country, went to the highest, and he was very, very successful, offered a position in management, which he turned down and said, I want to go to New York City. So he comes to New York City in the early 1900s, really to study acting. That was his vision for himself at that time. And not long after being in an acting school, he realized this is not his strength. So he's trying to figure out what he wants to do in New York City, and he's struggling. In fact, he talks in How to Win Friends about just the places he lived in New York that were he was impoverished and cockroach infested and so forth. So he finally gets an idea to teach public speaking, and he teaches this class in 1912 at the YMCA in Harlem. And the way it worked at that time was people would pay on a session-by-session basis. So if they came to the first session and they didn't find value, they wouldn't come back, and Dale needed to eat. So he's doing his first session. This is in October of 1912, and he's looking around the room, and he's teaching people the fine art of speaking. You can see people are starting to nod off a little bit. And he gets the idea, hey, why don't I invite them to start coming up? He's running out of content. So they do. And he starts to see how it unlocks people, the confidence to get up in front of the room. People are nervous and are afraid, but they stand up and all of a sudden they've got confidence. And so what he also found was that people needed not just that confidence, but really the development of human relations principles, how to be more likable, how to be more effective, how to build stronger trust and that type of thing. So the Dale Carnegie course, which was, again, our company was founded in 1912 by Dale Carnegie, it absolutely took off. And he did a variety of other things, building the courses, traveling the world and so forth. But it was in 1936 that he actually wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he actually didn't want to write a book. He had tried to write a book before. It wasn't successful. He had Simon & Schuster, one of the executives, was in one of his classes. He said, you got to write a book. And Dale said, I really don't want to do that. But Leon Shimkin was the man's name, and he persuaded Dale to do this. And ultimately, when How to Win Friends came out, it was such an instant success. They could not keep the printing presses going. It sold, I think, like 700,000 copies within a very short period of time. And that was really the emergence of Dale Carnegie as an iconic cultural figure throughout the 1900s.
We have to say that today you have well over 8 million graduates from Dale Carnegie training around the world. 8 million people and growing
Yes.
still. You mentioned earlier that you'd recently done an update
Yes.
of the 1936 book. I'm very curious to understand what was different. If we put the two books side by side, what will we notice?
It's interesting because the first question is, do you even want to update a book of this kind of this caliber, this quality? It's a masterpiece. It truly is, as you said, one of the most read books of all time. And Dale's daughter, Donna, who is just very zealous about Dale's legacy, we had talked about, how do we update this book? What kinds of changes would it need? And really, the perspective was we want to change as little as possible. So there's updating of language. I mean, it was written at a time when different words might have resonated. So some of the wording is different. We also found that in the 1980 update, there were a number of stories that were added that were not added by Dale Carnegie. And as we went back and looked at some of those, we thought maybe we should take some of these out and restore the book back to a little bit more of its original nature. But we also found a number of stories that never made the original How to Win Friends that were written by Dale Carnegie. So we did put there's some new content in there as well. So what you have is essentially this masterpiece which remains, completely intact with some kind of softening or updating of language, and then also removing some stories and adding some new ones.
I'll be back in a moment with more of Superhero Leadership. Stay with us.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
So one of the things we talk about a lot on our show is the 32 essentials for what I call superhero leadership. Mm-hmm. And these are things that I've developed. I started over 20 years ago. Some of the people in the audience have heard this before, but I was asked to give my first real speech on leadership. I was the CEO of Marvel Entertainment. We were doing very well. But interestingly, I had never really thought much consciously about leadership or my leadership. And I was very nervous about giving. I'm not nervous at all in public events. It goes back to college. I wasn't in contests, but I was in public speaking in classes and really enjoyed it, actually. So that's not the issue. But I felt that, I had to deliver to this big audience. And I got on a plane flight. It was 11 hours. I was in a trance for like 9 of those 11 hours, and I came up with what was then 28 essentials. Today it's 32. But I'd be very curious at some point to do a comparison. I know Dale Carnegie there's a small book that you can get of Dale Carnegie's essentials, if you will, or his principles. And I wonder how many overlap.
So the book you're referring to, we have a book, it's called the Dale Carnegie Golden Book. And so this is a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People has 30 principles. And How to Stop Worrying and Start Living has 30 principles. Okay. So this book has 30 from How to Win Friends, 30 from How to Stop Worrying, 60 principles total. But I do think you and Dale were kind of thinking along the same lines. You got 32, he's got 30. I think there is overlap because, frankly, a lot of the current leadership thought, if you look at it, originates back to Dale Carnegie. What Dale Carnegie was teaching fundamentally, which you talk about in your 32 principles, are ideas about respect and appreciation and how you bring out the best in other people. How can you be people-focused? So much of How to Win Friends is about the reality that so much of our happiness and success depends on how effective we are at interacting with other people. If I'm good at leading other people and developing trust and being empathetic and respectful and all those kinds of things, I could be an effective leader. I could be an effective husband and father and person in the community. But if I'm the difficult person, I'm going to be hitting ceilings in my career. I'll probably have trouble in my marriage and so forth. So what has made How to Win Friends so important is that it really is a manual. And the number of people who will come to me and say, I read this book, it changed my life. Guy Fieri, the famous chef, recently was telling me about his life before Dale Carnegie, reading How to Win Friends, and after, and just how it changed his management style. And he has all of his team members read How to Win Friends. So many people talk about the influence of the book because I think it goes back to these human principles that really drive us all. And I'll also say that leading a company that operates in 86 countries, I've been all over the world, and what I find is these principles connect us. A lot of what you're talking about kind of goes back to these same ideas about just, how do we influence, how do we connect, how do we bring out the best in other people. So I think if you do kind of the Venn diagram, you're going to find a lot of overlap.
You've been the CEO of Dale Carnegie for about 10 years now.
That's right.
And how much did you know? Were you a fan, so to speak, before you took that job?
Yes. In fact, the story of how I came to this is interesting, well, at least for me, which was, as a young lawyer, I decided to take a Dale Carnegie class. I'd heard my dad talk about it, my mom talk, so I'd take a Dale Carnegie class. And at that time, my life was very goal focused. So went from high school to college to law school. My vision was to become an attorney in a large firm, become a partner, make a lot of money, do that for 40 years. I mean, that's where I was at that time. And when I joined a large firm, and I was on, I think, a partner track, things were going well, but I took this course and I really realized that I don't think I was, as much as I was a successful lawyer, I wasn't a happy lawyer. It really did inspire me ultimately, as I mentioned, to leave the practice of law, to go into business, to start a business. And for the years that I was doing that, I would have How to Win Friends on my desk. It just guided my leadership. It propelled my career. I just really tried to internalize the principles. In fact, after I took a Dale Carnegie course, I started practicing the principles very actively, and people started to notice a difference in me. They said, gosh, you seem friendlier, you seem, a little less confrontational and so forth. And so much so that when I graduated from this course in December of 1996, 95, and I met my wife in January 96, wife-to-be, first date, I'm telling her all about, it's Dale Carnegie, Dale Carnegie. We get married, she takes a Dale Carnegie course. And I think to myself, the regret I have is I didn't take this course when I was younger. So now I'm like, I've got to have my kids take this course. So I've got 6 children, 4 girls and 2 boys. And when my 2 oldest daughters were 13 and 14, I said, you need to take a Dale Carnegie course. They have Dale Carnegie courses for teens. This is long before the thought of even being the CEO of Dale Carnegie was on my radar screen. And they took the program, and I saw how much it had a huge impact on them as teenagers. I mean, in terms of just their confidence and interpersonal skills and leadership and all these different things. So since that time, all my kids have taken the program. But when I had the opportunity, ultimately, to interview for the role of Dale Carnegie, what happened was I was the president of a company in Michigan. It was a company called Asset Health. It's a national health promotion wellness company working with large companies, still exists. I was an owner in that company, still am. But I was the president of that company, and a friend of mine who was at Dale Carnegie had said, hey, the current Dale Carnegie CEO has retired, and you should apply for the role. And I thought, geez, are you kidding me? Dale Carnegie, this program that's had this huge impact on my life. It was mind-blowing to think that I might lead this amazing company. And ultimately, through what turned out to be a very rigorous recruiting and interview process, there's a whole story behind that, and psychological assessments and things like that. They ultimately hired me in April of 2015. I started May of 2015. But even now, Peter, I often think about like the kid who grew up watching the Yankees, and then he finds himself on the pitcher's mound. He's like, wow, I can't believe it. So I love this company. I love what we do. I love the people who deliver what we do all over the world. And it's a truly a humbling honor to be involved with this organization.
You mentioned you have courses for teenagers. I have on my website, petercuneo.com, 15 things, and I'm about to add a few more as I talk to people. 15 things for young people to learn leadership. It's interesting. Is there... and some of Dale's principles would relate to young people, I think, and understanding potentially being leaders, or at least understanding how the world works.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I'd also say if you go to typical Dale Carnegie programs, you can find a lot of young people in there.
And I have to interrupt you because we're talking a lot about Dale Carnegie, but I want the audience to know, no, I am not getting paid by Dale Carnegie to have Joe as a guest. I won't get paid. But I do think that what Dale Carnegie does is very interesting to all of us. We're all about leadership and learning leadership, being better leaders. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I mean, I appreciate your caveat on that. And, there's a quote. This is not a Dale Carnegie quote. I'm not exactly sure who said this, but it basically is that the level of our success rarely exceeds the level of our self-development. In other words, each of us has a commitment to develop ourselves. And I know as leaders, it's our responsibility to help develop other people. So many times, companies are looking at their young people with this great potential and they're saying, this is something that can help them. Or they're looking at their leaders and it's something that can help them. And other times, it might be a parent. For example, as a parent, I said, what's my role in helping my kids get the skills? This, again, before I even had Dale Carnegie on my radar screen. And Dale Carnegie's not the only. There's other great books out there and other things, but that people could read. But the point is, what is our commitment to our own development? What is our commitment to our own growth? And when we take these kinds of programs, if we are all in, they can really accelerate that. But in many cases, younger people, there's been kind of a convergence of a couple different things that have impacted social skills and the ability for younger people, many younger people, not all, to interact. One clearly is the emergence of social media and devices and the way that people interact culturally. And then the other thing, frankly, is COVID. I mean, COVID really did a number on particularly younger people. I think on all of us, but I've seen so many younger people who had a harder time coming back into an in-person environment after being remote for so long. And it's impacted confidence and so forth. So, there really is a need, a great, great need for, I'd say, younger people, but many people just in general, to say, how do I connect with others? Do I have the confidence to look someone in the eye, as you said? Do I have the skills? Maybe I have the desire, but I may not have the skills. It's a real challenge, and I think it's a societal challenge.
We'll continue our conversation with Joe right after this short break. And that brings us to another topic, I think, Joe, which is a personal question for you. And I'm wondering also what Dale Carnegie says about this. I get a lot of questions lately when I talk to people privately.
Walmart Business is in the business of saving you time, money, and hassle. Whether your business started in a garage or is a garage, Walmart Business has the tools to help you get where you're going. Tools like free shipping, multi-user accounts, and just about any item your company needs.
Even a double filtration cyclone dust collector.
Yep, even that.
Sweet.
Walmart Business. It's the Walmart you love. Now for your business. Learn more at business.walmart.com. Terms apply.
Asking me about downtime for them personally, getaway time, relaxation, whatever you want to call it, how to do it, how to relax, and what have you. And my family would tell you I'm not a good relaxer. I am a fundamentally impatient person, which is good and bad, depending on the situation. They often talk about going on vacation and for a week, and it took me 3 days to unwind before I was really, call it ground zero. And then the next 3, for 1 day, and the next 3 days, I was winding up to go back. What would Dale Carnegie say, or let me make it personal, what do you do, Joe, in your life to find those relaxing moments that everyone needs?
Well, let me just say, just to really quickly on Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie wrote a whole book on how to stop worrying and start living, which is really about how to manage stress and how to maintain the right mindset and how to, really cultivate within ourselves a sense of gratitude and focus and all those kinds of things. So that book, in my mind, is one of the most important books he wrote, How to Win Friends, of course, and that book. When I think back about COVID, that was a book I leaned on very heavily, leading a global company that was struggling greatly during COVID. We were an in-person, company. All of our training programs were in person. And so when everything was shutting down around the world, I was watching all of our businesses really be on pause. And as you know, being a CEO, it's like, oh my gosh, it was terrifying to think about that. And that book really helped me. But that's one thing. There's a lot of principles in that book that can help people with stress. I make it a priority, and I have to try to make sure that I'm making time for myself. It's interesting. This is some years ago, I went to my doctor, and I had gotten shingles. I was in my 40s, and I thought, shingles? What? I thought I had to be 40 years older to get shingles. And the doctor, well, you probably got this from stress. And I realized how much stress I was under, like you. I mean, I'm going all over the world. I'm dealing with leading a company, all these different things. I said to my doctor, I said, I don't feel like I'm under stress. And he said, well, whether you feel like you are or not, you are. Your body's under stress. So, particularly since that time, I mean, I exercise. I try to exercise every day. I like to run. I run marathons. I don't know if that helps with stress or not. Weights, a whole range of other things. But I mean, the first thing I do is, frankly, I start the first 30 to 45 minutes of my day every day. I wake up, I make a green tea, and I go into this little room I have off my bedroom, and I will meditate, pray, prepare myself for the day, think about the prior day, what went well, what am I grateful for, where do I need to be focused today, is there anything from the prior day that I need to make amends on? Sometimes, like you, I mean, I can have short patience, and sometimes, even though we're How to Win Friends and Influence People, I'll say something I regret. I may have to go back and apologize, but I try to create that space, even just for that introspection. And it has been remarkable. Whether we think we have a routine or not, if the first thing I do in the morning is I check my email or my social media, I mean, that's going to have an effect. But I try to create that space. And also prioritizing. I had this conversation with my mother not long ago. My mother's going to be 92 this year, and thank goodness she's been
God bless.
Yeah,
God bless.
Great shape. I'll say, Mom, I want to come see you. Oh, you've got so much going on. Mom, if I don't make time to make something happen for her or for my kids or for my wife, it's not going to happen. So I find I have to just be very intentional in prioritizing time for the people. So like you, leading a business, I work very, very hard. I work a lot of hours. I work all kinds of different hours, and I try to balance it up by making sure I'm getting the physical help I need in terms of just both nutrition and exercise and downtime. And this whole issue of stress is a real thing. And again, there's a physical component to me, there's a mental component to me, and going back to Dale Carnegie, which is where you started with the question, I mean, there are principles he teaches, things like living in daytime compartments. A lot of times we have anxiety about things that are going to happen, and the vast majority of the things we worry about never happen or are never as bad as we think. So there are principles that we can apply that will help us with stress as well.
The one thing I would say is much better today than when I first came into business and was young, is people are much more likely to talk about their mental issues, their stresses. No one feels great all the time. If they tell you they do, they're delusional or they're just making it up, because we as human beings are going to be associated with that. And I do think getting back to leadership and dealing with a lot of disparate people, different people in different situations, while different people may show their emotions a little bit differently. By the way, I'm a very big believer that body language is 50% of communications. And if you can read body language for other people, that's often a great clue on how to deal with them. We've got more leadership lessons for you after this break.
Hey, it's Paris. I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and Auto Camp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
And I'm just going to wrap it up. I want to ask you about one other topic we talk a lot about. And that is, I really feel that the area of communications is a big sore point for leaders today. I think that many leaders have lost the sense of value for proper and regular communications. And almost all the ineffective leaders I've come across in my career, were poor communicators. And today I think communication is even more important. We've talked about sociological changes and young people and understanding them. I think it puts a much bigger premium on regular, honest communications with as many people as you can, both formal and maybe informal at times as well.
Sure.
Any words of advice for us in that area?
Yeah, I mean, communication is one of those things where we think we're doing it because we know how to speak, but are we really good communicators? I mean, we can actually learn to become more effective communicators, and part of it is two ways, right? I mean, it's not just about me. I think many executives will say, well, I communicated on this. I sent out the email. Like, that's enough. But the question is, and again, I think humility is a really important part of communication because it is about trying to see things from another person's point of view.
Yes.
Dale Carnegie always talked about the audience. It's about the audience. So if I'm communicating, I'm trying to convey something. How is it being received? Am I being clear? What are people taking away from it? What should I take away from what someone else is saying? So this issue of communication is critically important, and part of it goes even to our conception of what communication is, right? It's not just a one-way, it is a two-way dialogue that really is about connection between two people. And it's going to become, I think, even more important in the years ahead as AI becomes more prevalent, as AI takes some of the skills away that are commoditizes certain things like hard skills and technical skills. We're going to be really forced to lean more on our communication skills, our interpersonal skills, our creative intelligence, social intelligence, those kinds of things. So what you're saying is 100% true. Not only is communication critical, it's going to be even more important. And it's really our responsibility, mine, yours, all of us,
Agreed.
To say, how do I become a more effective communicator?
I agree. Yep. Well, Joe, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed this, my friend. For our audience, really, I think I met you for a handshake a year ago or something.
That's right. Yeah.
That's
CEO Forum.
But yes, one of my biggest regrets in life in general is I've met and worked with and had friends with so many really high quality people, and I just can't keep up with all of. I got an email, Joe, a couple of days ago from someone I haven't seen for 30 years, who had just seen the announcement of our new podcast. 30 years, and reached out to me to say congratulations and so on and so forth. And I remembered, oh man, I love this guy and his wife so much. This goes way back. And as did my wife. We were social friends and so on and so forth. So,
but that's been a regret of mine too, losing touch with people who are really important. And I've tried to really intentionally, I write down the names of people and just like each week reach out to somebody and so forth. But this goes back to your comment about stress too. I think our lives are richer by the quality of the relationships we have with other people.
Totally. But they're stress reducers, no question about it. Well, thanks, Joe, so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Honored to be with you.
I know you're busy, but good luck to you and good luck to the firm.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. That's it for this episode of Superhero Leadership. A big thanks to Joe Hart for joining me. If you're ready to sharpen your leadership skills, visit Dale Carnegie and start unlocking your potential. Until next time, keep leading like a superhero with purpose, passion, and integrity. I'm Peter Cuneo.